Hi, my name is Phil Anderson and I'm running for United States Senate to represent Wisconsin. Tonight's video, I'm going to do a follow-up on last night's video. Yesterday I talked a little bit about Mike McCabe and his efforts, his struggle to reduce the influence of money in politics. It's a very admirable effort. I disagree with his methods, but agree with his goal. But I'd like to address something in particular that he covers and that is very important, a term I mentioned last night called rent-seeking. What rent-seeking is in economic terms is when a business or a group of businesses, instead of trying to compete with their competitors and outcompete them, they choose to try and influence politicians and therefore influence regulations so that they can have a competitive edge that way. Instead of trying to do the hard work of running a business, lowering costs, lowering prices, doing a better job, and in that way remaining successful in the marketplace, they instead choose to try to influence politicians and have those politicians institute regulations and barriers to their competitors. It happens all the time. As a matter of fact, there's a huge increase in the regulatory burden on new businesses, startup businesses, entrepreneurs over the last 50 years. There's some 4 times as many regulations and 4 times as many jobs and sectors of the American economy regulated by regulations than was the case 60 years ago. Now, some of those things you might argue make sense. There are things about safety, for example, regulating who gets to be a dentist or a doctor or something like that. But a lot of them are just sort of licensing and regulation things, things that tax the right that you already have to open a business and to produce what you want and to see if people will buy it. That is a huge burden to people who are trying to start businesses and compete with already existing corporations. It's a huge burden to people who are lower and middle class, trying to start a business with skills they've acquired and to compete with bigger businesses that are already better established. It's a tax. Those regulations are a tax on entrepreneurship and on people that are trying to make their way up the economic ladder from the lower sections. It's a tax. It's a barrier. And it's a tragedy because not only does it make entrepreneurship less possible, less likely to succeed, but it also enables large corporations to do a crappier job at providing the goods and services that they're supposed to. So when you look at a business like, let's just say Walmart, for example. If you object to how Walmart does business, one of the things that Walmart does is influence politicians to create regulations that make it harder to open competitive businesses. That's what they do. That's what all kinds of other industries do. So again, to copy last night's point, to reinforce it, the real answer to helping people become more prosperous, especially those that are trying to get ahead from lower and middle class incomes, people that have skills, people that want to go to work for themselves and make money and produce wealth and share it and be charitable, of course, the best thing that we can do is get rid of the rent seeking. But that will never happen as long as the government is still powerful. So what we need to do is reduce that regulatory burden and be committed to keeping it reduced so that the government is less powerful and those people who would be rent seekers, big corporations, big unions, whoever that might be, have less profit in investing in politicians. To make the government small to the point where it's just not worthwhile to try and get rent-seeking because it won't pay off. And that will greatly help our economy. It will make our goods and services better and more competitive and allow people from lower and middle class economic strata to compete with big businesses by not having to bear the regulatory burden of getting into business in the first place. That is my answer. As your senator, I will do my best to reduce the regulatory burden of people that are starting new businesses, small businesses, and competing with bigger businesses by not giving advantage to the larger corporations. First of all, not accepting their donations, but second of all, not allowing any donations to affect the regulatory structure that exists in the United States, and by reducing that to the point where people can get ahead. Thanks, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.